For too many years, families of children with devastating illnesses have felt helpless as they watch their child suffer. Today, they're taking matters into their own hands and finally finding relief treating their child with cannabis. These are their stories.
Hey, family and friends, welcome to another episode.
Hello, hello, hello. I hope everyone is doing well.
Yeah, I hope everyone out there is happy, safe, and healthy. Today, guys, we have a truly exciting episode, and we are so fortunate to have one of the most influential men in the cannabis and hemp industry. He is the founder and former chairman and CEO of Canopy Growth Corporation, co-chairman and past CEO of Martello Technologies, and co-founder of Rockify's and Better Software. He is currently on the board of directors for MindMed, and you probably have been hearing about him in the news as of late, working with mushrooms. And so we're looking forward to speaking with Bruce Linton, all the way from Ottawa.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello, guys. Good. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. I know you have a busy schedule trying to change the world, so thanks again for coming.
No problem. You know, if you just, even though we're all sort of sitting still in our geographic location, greater extent than we ever thought we would, the world hasn't stopped sort of having things happening. In fact, so many areas it's gotten faster. So it kind of, I would say, heads down, working harder maybe than I have been in some time.
Yeah.
Nice.
So how are you and your family doing during these interesting times?
Almost 50 years younger.
Oh, really?
And they're like, seriously, how'd you get so much younger? I said, well, I now behave like a 5-year-old. and what I mean by that is, like, I only control two things: when I go to bed and what I eat. Mm-hmm. And I lose my mind occasionally over both of those. And every once in a while, I lay down on the floor and kick and scream for really small reasons, like my shoelace breaks or something. And it's just because COVID puts you in that state where you, every once in a while,
you lose your shit.
You just got to lay on the floor, stomp your feet a bit, lose your shit, and then get back up and go.
That's so true.
So,
seriously.
you know, it makes you very young if you embrace being 5.
Yeah, we're working with it.
Don't fight it. Just lay down, kick your feet, scream a little bit. You feel way better.
Yeah, because there are definitely those days where you're like,
yeah,
it's rough.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it. Just do a good job of it.
Oh, my God, you're right. So question for you is this. You know, what got you interested in the cannabis industry? Like, what were you doing prior to that? And then what made you say, you know what, I'm looking into this industry, or I want to get involved?
So I spent the prior 10 or 15 years creating various tech companies, but I don't know how to code. So, and I give you that in that knowing how to implement an opportunity is different than recognizing an opportunity. And so when it came to cannabis, I was probably one of the few people who had never purchased cannabis that started a cannabis company. Now, don't get me wrong. I was cheap, not a non-consumer. But I really wasn't like a activist, and I appreciate the people who made a difference. But what I saw in Canada was that there'd been about a 12 or 13-year window where the courts had made it required that there was legal access to people, but political will had not moved anything. It just was sort of a stagnant, challenging bunch of legal stuff. And at that time, we had kind of like a Republican conservative leadership, and they were starting to get some friction from the police, which they're getting again now over essentially all hallucinogenic banned items, because the cops find it completely ridiculous that they were trying to arrest people for growing cannabis or having cannabis when we had a medical system let you grow or have cannabis, so they couldn't tell who's a good guy or a bad guy. So they just quit trying, and the leadership of the country needed the police officers to be happy, because if you're a Republican or conservative and the cops aren't happy, you know you're out of alignment with the people who vote for you because they have gray hair and like cops. And so my view was that those triggers meant there was going to be something new coming, and I should look at it because quite a lot of people like cannabis. And that was the simple analysis that I went through, and I asked about 4 or 5 people, would you like to do this with me? And all of them said, stupid idea, very bad idea. You're going to get in business and you're going to have conflict with criminals and you're going to get in trouble and da-da-da. And I thought, well, I don't think it's a stupid idea, and I think the fact that rational people are acting irrationally means that I probably won't have that many great competitors. I should for sure start one.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
That's a good way to look at it.
Then when I went to raise money, I made sure that I was super clean-shaven, good haircut, wore a suit, sometimes a three-piece suit with a white shirt, tie, and I would go to talk to them about cannabinoids and cannabis and capital. And I would be very clear that I was not the customer, I was the supplier. And that it was legal. And the reason I did that is, imagine if somebody was running a pharmaceutical company that made some kind of hallucinogenic product and they came in high as a kite and said, our stuff's great, I'm feeling high. How would that work?
Not gonna
work.
You
don't raise money that way. And so for the first several years, it was a process of raise money, spend money, raise money, spend money. And over that course, I started getting more interested, or more, I wouldn't say interested. I felt like the next part of the fight was my fight. And what I mean by that is there was unreasonable bias being applied by people who were reacting without thinking. They were saying, I don't like it. And I said, well, I didn't invent cannabis. I can confirm that. And the only reason you might not like my business is because someone in your family or you is involved in selling illegal cannabis, and that's going to be a worse business over time. So you don't like me because you think you're going to get worse Christmas or Hanukkah gift or something. That's got to be the reason you don't like me. And they think you're nuts. But I said, otherwise, you're completely irrational. What you're saying is governments should ignore things. Is that your public policy view? Governments should ignore things. And so where we are now is cannabis is not being ignored in many countries, and there's a conversation in almost every country about governing it. And what's happening is right behind that, in Canada, they made it so it was legal about maybe 3 weeks ago. A person went to court, and they have the right legally at a federal level to have access to psilocybin or mushrooms for therapeutic benefit, and which means if there's one person, soon there'll be two, and there'll be many, and it'll become something that is governed. And if that's the case, the logic that says there's evidence that mushrooms, psilocybin, help you, I think they'll say, well, there's evidence LSD might help you for certain circumstances, or ketamine, or. And so I think the rate at which medical access, and I'm not advocating everybody get high and go to work, I'm saying medically, to make it so that symptoms that are causing a diminished quality of life can be mitigated.
Yes.
That should be something that you can't ask a government to ignore, and you should be pissed off if they do.
Yeah. Wow. Now, so you've been in the industry for what, about 10 years now?
I started walking around with that idea in late 2012. Yeah, so eight years. Going to be 9 soon, yeah. And there's a lot of people who did a lot of fighting to get us to where we are, and I always try to salute. And some of them say, "Well, you monetized and made all the money off our back." Well, that's probably true, but it wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
What I did is helped win an argument they were having for a lot of years, and the argument simply was, "This is available. You can let people get it from an unknown source, which means it has no certainty of safety."
Yeah.
Exactly.
And its price is very exploitive. Or you can regulate it and let it become safe, and you can then use the income off of that to go and educate doctors. You can pay.
True.
We spent hundreds, millions of dollars going to see physicians with data, like over 70 studies that we would reference why cannabis could be, and various THC and CBD combinations, used for certain indications. And I guarantee you that if you didn't create a business, you wouldn't have that kind of money, and you couldn't go see doctors. And if you didn't go see doctors, the gatekeeper was always going to be the doctor, and in the absence of any good information, they're going to say no. And so if you want to win the argument, we all work together, but I think we did a lot to pay for the education of the points of reference called the medical system.
Yes.
And I think that is a critical step, because in every country, cannabis regulation starts by parents with a sick kid fighting with the government.
Yes.
And the government invariably loses that fight in the public eye. Then it gets handed over to regulators who make it hard to get at, and then doctors say no. And until big companies get formed and actually push those second two stages, being able to have a right that you can't access is not helpful.
True. Well, since you've been in the industry, what is it that you like and dislike about it?
I like a lot of things. I like giving people tours to say, like, here's how it all fits together and works together. And I like when they got to the point where it was no longer about growing cannabis. It was about the cannabinoids inside what you grew. And the fact that we know so little about so many of them, that there's so much to do. I really like the fact that you could have PhD scientists working right beside somebody with a lot of tattoos who knew a lot about growing and had a pretty scratchy voice.
Nice.
Diversity.
And that if you did it right, they were colleagues, peers, and friends. That's a pretty cool work environment. I would say I like the fact that you can go and take this push and have a discussion in Germany and Italy and Netherlands and New Zealand and Australia and Colombia and Canada. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, it was the topic for a long time, and it was a good thing to sort of advance it. What I didn't like is a lot of people who obviously just want to be a bit more rich so they can do something. I don't know what they want to do with their life. Like, there's a lot of people who made the name of a company, went and got money, sold their stock as quick as they could. A bunch of people who didn't know better got stuck with a crappy stock, and that person was off with a couple of million or 5 million or 10 million bucks. And I don't know what they do. Like, maybe they buy a boat and they call it rip-off. But like, it's just, that's the worst and most distasteful thing, because even though I made a good rate of return, in my company, everyone had equity, and everyone who worked there. The day I was fired, there were 200 people, over 200 people, I believe, that were millionaires because they chose to come to work for us.
Wow.
And so one of the things that you guys wanted to talk about was inclusion and racial diversity and things like that. And there's lots of good thought about how do we change the color and sex of the person who's in charge. That's a good argument. You should have that topic. That's for others to discuss and debate, because there's lots there. But I still think that as you go down the org chart, it disproportionately reflects people who have not had access or advantage of income, and it could be on their sex, or it could be on their visible minority status or other things. And if you don't include those people in the economic opportunity by giving them a chunk of the company for showing up and then more for staying and being good, I can tell you, some of those people I described who became millionaires were senior growers or who started off as junior growers. And if you guys came to work for me, and all of a sudden, because you were good and you showed up and you worked hard, and all of a sudden this year the stock would be up, which it isn't this year in that company at least, but if it were up, and all of a sudden you said, shit, this year we just made 2 times our salary in our stock options. You know how much difference that makes? Huge difference.
Yeah, it does.
It means you change how you plan paying for school, or change how you plan for where you live. And so those gains only happen if the mandate of the companies in the sector are to treat it as an inclusion sector, not just an inclusion, who's the boss who gets all the dough. No, it shouldn't be a debate about who's the boss who gets all the dough. Everybody should get a slice.
That's true. So going into that part, then, do you think social equity can be something achieved in this industry?
100%. 100%. Everybody, every marijuana company in every state should have an obligation to have a comprehensive equity inclusion program. And it even has to be a profit sharing or a form of option, which is essentially saying you join today, you have a right to buy the stock in the future at today's price, which is pretty logical, because if you come here and you work really hard with me, we both created value. And so we should all get a share of that. And if the state or the provincial government said they must be implemented and they can't be at a ratio of greater than 10 to 1, meaning the top dog can't have 10 times more than the bottom dog. A lot of people say, oh, that's this or that. You know what it is? It's the way economics have to work for social inclusion. Otherwise, you just made somebody rich who's a different color or sex, and nobody else who's in the org chart did any better. Fantastic. Total failure. You got to do both. Because that may affect, right? Like, if you put the right person in at the top and they have this obligation, it may affect who really wants to work there. And then you start to have, like, a little bit more differentiation on, well, I really like working at this one because it's so-and-so who runs it, and we get this equity program, but they also give us lunch on Fridays. I don't know, whatever you want. But you do need to think about a texture of inclusion rather than just changing the name and the color at the top.
Now, do you consider that as part of your criteria when you're evaluating a company that you want to invest in, or companies that have opportunities to grow, like they should use that as a criteria, as one of their criteria?
So everyone I talk to them about stock option granting, and do you agree with doing this? Because what I'm describing to you apparently is the worst way to do it. If you asked analysts for like Wall Street or Bay Street, they would say, well, in the eyes of shareholders, that looks expensive because you're giving away the company. And then I would say, well, then those are dumb shareholders. Because what I'm doing is I'm getting people to make the company worth more faster because they're motivated. They're aligned. They show up at work and treat each other as peers. And so what I'm describing is considered an extraordinarily not right way to do it, but a lot of tech companies sort of do it. Now, the good news is if you work at a big tech company and you have a computer science degree, you'll get that. Maybe if you're a manager, you'll get that. If you're the person going around making sure the building's clean or safe, you probably don't get any. You should get some.
Okay. So how many, the companies that you evaluated, do you notice that they invest heavily on the marketing side or the R&D, or it's just top heavy? Because I've noticed that a lot of companies haven't been in the industry, working with some companies and looking, I'm like, you guys got a lot of top heavies. Like, so where is the money going? Is it going into the R&D? Is it going where it needed to make sure you get the right product on the shelf? Do you see that?
I'd say it's kind of like meeting people. They all have their own personality, right? Some drive hard on science.
Yeah.
Some drive hard on brand development. Some drive hard on, events orientation. And I would say that that's okay because, if we all had the same company, we wouldn't necessarily agree that that's the right company. And so there are some that have been, right? You can say, well, I'm in the recreational business or I'm in the medical business. I think that's actually monkey business because I say that in that they're playing around. Really what you have to be in either of those is if you want to have a durably different good. Like if I want to sell you something that you're willing to stand in line to get, and you'd only go to one store if that's the only store that had it. What I can't do is just put a cool label on it and say that it's cool. What it has to be is it has to be in there and it has to be differentiated, meaning science, either figured out a way to make it more effective or figured out exactly what it affects, how often you have to take it, the format of delivery. There's something unique. And that science then will cause loyalty because loyalty is that you're going to get an outcome you really desire, and it's going to happen every time the same way. And in medical or rec, it's the same, right? Like you don't walk into a liquor store and say, how strong is the vodka today?
That's true.
Right? Like you don't do that.
No.
You don't walk into the pharmacy and say, is aspirin okay today? Is it like a little weak or a little strong? So you need to know that science and process result in that. Now, if the aspirin made your headache worse, you probably wouldn't buy it very often. But if it made it better, you'll buy it. And so I think that how you take science and put it in place is very different across the companies. But in the absence of any science, what you're doing is selling a commodity in a sense. And I realize it's different than, say, white sugar, but I've never seen a family get in a fist fight over which brand of white sugar they bought.
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
so
oh, shit, honey, you bought that kind of white sugar? I'm moving out. No, that did not happen.
No, my question for you is with the hemp industry, we interview a lot of business owners, and some of them are saying that the industry is getting saturated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hemp is a funny thing because probably what you mean is they're the type who are growing it so they can extract CBD.
Yes.
And they were correct a while ago because in 2018, when it was a permissible activity to plant hemp, the only song playing on the radio at that time was CBD, 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 CBD.
Mm-hmm.
And so what people did is they danced the song and they all planted a crop. Maybe there's 1 million acres of crop and almost all of it's for CBD. So those plants tend to be oriented to having low THC, under 0.3, highest possible CBD, and they don't care that they're short and stout because they're not thinking about what else is in that plant. But the hemp plant that was popular in America for many, many generations and has been globally active that's not for CBD or not primarily for CBD doesn't look the same, and it's tall, it's thin, and it has fibers that keep it from snapping over. It has this really strong root, and it has hundreds of purposes. Like you can use it to maybe make your next pair of jeans better with a mix of cotton. You can stretch it and twist it and put electricity through it. You can use it as an insulation. You can take it and make fenders out of it. You can do literally hundreds of things. You can think about how to make it into a pellet that would be used in an injection molding system and get rid of most or all of the hydrocarbons. So that part is almost still at zero, and that's because if you grew that plant right now in America and you said, well, I'm going to now send it to the factory, the processing plant that converts it to those things, they don't exist. And so what I've started with Collective Growth is the idea of going and buying those technologies that exist around the globe but hadn't been legal in the U.S., assembling them in America and allowing America to have another crop called hemp, very tall, and processed into these things where we knock folks over who are just using hydrocarbons or just using cotton, and they're all not terrific for the environment.
Interesting. So where do you see the role of intellectual property then playing in the cannabis and hemp industry?
Well, so in the hemp industry, those processes I just described are full of existing and or potential intellectual property, because how do you make a pellet that can go into an injection molder and have that unique to you? There's a bunch of IP around there. And so there's everything from how you harvest it to how you do it and stretch it and twist it and da-da-da-da-da. So lots of IP there. The IP that's going to, I think, come out of cannabis, which is obviously a principally THC crop, but does have typically a proportionality of CBD, that's going to be on things like as simple in the recreational environment to how do you make a beverage that tastes terrific, is clear, and is powered by 2, maybe 3 milligrams of THC. So we tackled that at Canopy, and I think it's a very unique process. But it could go all the way to what's cannabinoid, like there's 100-ish cannabinoids in that plant. We only get paid for 2. What's cannabinoid 84 do if you could isolate it, make a bunch of it, and give it to people? Does some of it work with animals better than humans? Like, what about if, the joke is you can make somebody have the munchies? Well, if you can make somebody hungry when they're feeling nauseous, that's an amazing achievement.
Yeah, exactly.
You can also, therefore, probably figure out how to make them not hungry. And so if you could actually find combinations of that to generate a appetite suppressant that didn't involve like a bulking agent like Slim Fast, that is a massive value proposition. And so there's all kinds of things like that still to come out of. What do these other cannabinoids do? How do we make them in volume and things of that nature?
Now, what are your thoughts about isolating them?
I think it's possible from the plant, and then I think what you're going to find are there'll be synthetic platforms or yeast or a variety of ways where they'll make for a while. They'll make a bunch of them because we really don't know enough about what they do. So I don't think it jumps to an immediate business, but it jumps to a lab supplying company. And then after a while, when they figure out which ones do what and what proportions, you might see that initially they're provided by a lab, but I could see over time where the plants will be taught, like a plant has a total capability of X. It could be all THC. It could be all CBD. Well, why couldn't it be none of those two and all the other things? So I think over time, people may evolve the plants to make the singular cannabinoids they want.
Almost like breeding?
Yeah, breeding, and there's all this CRISPR technology, which is like a punch-out stuff. There's a bunch of ways they get there. Some are more societally accepted, and some are more efficient in time.
Currently, as you know, New York is possibly, it's been going on for about 2-3 years about going legal.
Recreationally.
Yeah, I know, right? Wait for it. Are you working on any projects in New York? I know since you're not that far from New York where you're located. Yeah. Do you have some ventures in New York?
So I'm invested in companies that are around New York. I look at New York a lot. I was just on a call with people in the New York business. I think every state's now just like COVID accelerated our adoption of things like Instacart. Why, when I can't go to the grocery store, why can't the groceries come to me? Mm-hmm. I think it's accelerated the consideration of recreational access, because if I have no money and I need jobs and people aren't using all the buildings in my state, what do I have as options? Regulate cannabis as recreational. Do we have any other good ideas that equal that? No. So the ability to get taxes, jobs, and use of real estate, probably the best entity to do that's currently not in play is that. So I think it's going to be a topic everywhere. It's not that they actually care about the regulation of cannabis. They care about the income and job generation. And it's at the end of the day, who really cares? Like, if I take vitamins, I take them because I think they taste good. If you take vitamins, you might take them because you think they do good things for you. At the end of the day, we both took a vitamin.
Exactly.
You get to the same outcome.
Exactly.
So it's about the outcome. No.
Yeah, definitely about the outcome.
And I'm going to give you guys about another 5 minutes, and then I got a blast.
All right.
Is that good?
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
Does that work?
That works for me.
So just want to get into MindMed. I know you're on the board of directors. Can you please tell us about the company and psychedelic medicine?
Yeah. So MindMed is one of what I think about 3 companies that exist that are trying to do serious science so that they can harness the potential that's in already good molecules that are called psychedelics. I like to call them neuromedicines because calling them psychedelics conjures up, Jimi Hendrix background music
exactly.
or something. And so that's a burden that I don't think they need to carry because neuromedicines are going to go to people who have serious mental state issues or addictive issues, and we don't need to give them the burden of also saying, well, you got off one thing by going on to another thing. No. So the idea is in MindMed that you take these good molecules and you evolve them in ways that make them to be eligible for regulation by FDA, or you bring the dosage and framework so that you can actually say it works for this. So a specific example might be something called a plant produces something called ibogaine, plant from Africa. Now, ibogaine, you might hear a celebrity going to a country to get unhooked from opioids, and they might be getting treated with ibogaine, which can have success at that, but it has 2 principal problems. One is it's apparently a horrific trip, and the second is that it can sponsor a cardiac event, which is not a good outcome. And by the nature of its hallucinogenic method, it's not eligible currently for the FDA to really give it a good look. So what they did over the last 7-8 years in a science company was work on engineering out of the molecule the hallucinogenic effect and the cardiac effect. And now it's being trialed in humans in Australia. And so the point of MindMed is to do that one and do many others like a platform where you take the almost like those things which we know have an effect on your psychoactive state, but have been put in a corner, find geographies like Switzerland or Australia where you can do the research and bring the results to the rest of the world. And when it works, people won't say, oh, yeah, but wasn't that banned at one time? They'll say, thank you for helping my brother get off of Oxy. And so things like that, I think, are going to be very disruptive and meaningful. And MindMed, I think, is very thoughtful in how they're pursuing these things and looking at options and work all over the world.
How far away from them actually reaching the stores or being on the market?
Yeah, these things are always a couple years out, 18, 24, 36. You never know exactly, but the reality is that if you're in trials in a country like Australia where humans may be getting a placebo or getting the product, that's, like Australians might be, sound a little different than us. Maybe they're a little taller or something, but I think they're pretty similar. And so if it works on someone in Australia, rather than making all the people who want it to work go to Australia, you might find that these trial results get adopted and fast-tracked. And you never know for sure, but we have enough serious problems for which the current set of solutions don't work. I think a lot of people are being a lot more thoughtful about mental health and addiction and things rather than saying, you should really focus more. Like that's not really working for anybody.
No.
Yeah, like I saw that they're looking at stuff at ADHD, which is so prevalent in children right now, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Instead of throwing the kitchen
Okay,
sink
we
at
better
them.
hit one more, and then I got to go because I'm going to bike home.
Okay, no problem. My last question is this. How many people have you mentored, or do you mentor people who are looking to get into the industry, and what kind of advice do you give them?
Well, I think it'd be alarming if anybody let me mentor them. I would say that what I try to be is a very active leader. And the difference between a leader and a manager is I have ideas, I say a direction I'm going, and a number of people always jump in to help me get there. And so I would say that I have created and continue to create a lot of opportunities for people to be excellent because I am good at saying I'm going over here and I don't know how to get there, ever.
And people figure it out.
And so almost always the process to success is knowing why or where and then figuring out how.
Why?
And so I would say that the why or where is me and the how is everybody around me. And at the end, when we get there, who mentored who? We just get there.
Thank you very much for that. We want to thank Bruce for taking the time out on his busy schedule to be on our show. we would welcome the opportunity in the near future to talk to you again, do some follow-up. Or that will come out to you in Ottawa, get on a vacation trip out there once the bans are lifted. Okay.
Well, you guys know what it's like to try and get me organized, so just don't lose Olivia's email, because trying to make me organized has been a non-effective journey for my whole life.
You know what?
I'm the same way.
Yeah, she's the same. I'm the only one that's organized here. You know what? It was a miracle in itself, so we appreciate that you taking the time out, so no worries at all, because we figure you were a busy man, so it's not a problem. But thank you again for your time.
Have a great night.
Be healthy. Be good. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.